Hello, fiber friend, and welcome to part 2 of Spinning with Evie. The difference between a handful of fiber and yarn is the twist. And in part 1, we covered that. We have learned how to control twist and the ways that we can get to know and use our equipment to give us the twist we want. And now it's time to put our fiber into the mix. So in part 2, what we will be doing is discussing twist angle and how that relates to our yarn. Then we will talk about woolen and worsted, what those terms mean and how they apply to us as spinners. And then we will do some drafting and work on drafting woolen and drafting worsted styles to make yarn. For part 2 of Spinning with Evie, you are going to need at least 4 ounces each of a comb top and a carded roving. I have some resources that you can look into to purchase those if you need to purchase them, or go stash diving. You might already have some of those materials and you don't need to buy any. That's fine. I'm not requiring you to use a specific fiber, just a specific preparation. So make sure that you have some carded fiber and some combed top ready to go for this section. You are also going to need a way to measure your twist angle. I have included a graphic in the workbook that you can use. You can print that out, laminate it. It's I hope a very, very useful tool for you. You can get a spinner's control card. I have the SZ twist tool from Kamaj, and you can also find spinner control tools on Amazon, Etsy, all over the place. What you really need to have, though, for this section is the ability to measure an angle, and you can do that with a simple protractor. You can also pull up protractor graphics online, on your phone, whatever, and use that as well. So you don't have to have a spinner's control card, although it is convenient. So let's get started with our first activity that has to do with twist angle, because this is really the crossover between twist and the fiber. Activity 1 has 2 parts to it. We're going to start just by kind of looking at some twist angles, and then we are going to apply that twist angle in a very, very slow motion, handheld, basic way. First thing to realize is that twist angle is not dependent on the thickness of the yarn. It's dependent on how much twist is put into the yarn, but you can have a consistent twist angle from the skinniest of yarn to the thickest of yarn. However, the amount of twist it takes to achieve that angle will vary. The thinnest of yarns will take more twist, and the thickest of yarns will take less twist to achieve the same twist angle. So that is something to keep in mind. If you are drafting and you are creating a very thin yarn, it will take more twist even to achieve the same twist angle. All right, so keep that in mind. Let's start to look at actual twist angles and then talk about how that affects the yarn that we are spinning, the yarn that we want. It's important to note that when you look at a protractor, our straight up line is going to be 90 degrees because our 0 is down here. But when we look at a control card, a spinner's control card, the 0 is the straight up and down line. A way that we can take into account that this is the 0 to be consistent when we talk about the angles is to take our protractor and we can turn it and measure going this way, or flip it over and kind of read it backwards going this way. You could also take a Sharpie and just make some notes on your protractor so that it would match more of what a spinner's control card looks like. And then also keep in mind, I did include a graphic in the workbook that you can use to figure out what your twist angle is. There's a key over here. I have 0 to 7 degrees. This is the least amount of twist, the very least. At this point, our yarn is not really gonna have integrity. It's not gonna hold together. If it's plied, the plies are gonna separate. It's gonna feel like it's very sloppy if it's plied, and if it's not plied, it might even just kind of fall apart. There's no integrity. That applies to both sides, whether it's S-twist or Z-twist. That's between the center line and the dark line, no integrity. Then once we go from the dark line to the first dotted line, which is about 20 degrees, that's kind of a dashed line, in here, that's where we're gonna find our softest yarns. I'm going to start with some of my hand spun and show you how I would find a twist angle of my hand spun. As I place my yarn over this chart, I can see that my yarn is a little less than the first dashed line, and that would put it in the soft yarn category. And that is, I can confirm how this yarn feels. It's very, very soft and squishy. Here is another yarn that I spun, and you can see that I have some inconsistency, don't I? If you tried to draw a line across the twist angle, there are some spots that might sort of pop out as not quite lining up because they're a little tighter spun, like this little section down here. So if that's the case for you, you can measure all of it, or you can just pick the one that's the most average. I'll take this strand right here, and I put it on the chart. Just the way the lighting works, it's a little bit more difficult to see. And it's closer to the solid line here. That solid line is around 25 degrees. So it's on the firmer end of the medium yarn. So what I've done for the worksheet here, you can just put the angle that you find, and you can put what it averages out to. That for this, I would say it's between 20 and 30. I could make an estimate at 25. We don't need the exact degrees. We want to find a range. If I put these yarns next to each other, you should be able to see that just visually as well. This is a much softer, squishier yarn. This is a little more dense. It's a little tighter. I did that on purpose because I was thinking that this yarn would end up in mittens, and this yarn is going to be a soft, squishy scarf. I want more durability out of mittens than what I need from my scarf. So a tighter twist with more twist and a higher twist angle is going to give me more durability. A gentler twist angle is going to give me a squishier, softer yarn. If we go more than 25 degrees, we're getting into the firm yarn. That's gonna be good for socks and things that you want to have a lot more durability. But once we get past 30 degrees, we're gonna end up pretty tough. That's warp territory. That's where we want it to have the most strength, but it's going to sacrifice softness to have that durability. And then once we get past 40 degrees, we are getting into the zone where, again, we have no integrity. Up here, we lose integrity because it's too soft. It will drift apart. Down here, we lose integrity because when the yarn has too much twist in it, it becomes brittle and it can snap apart. So that's the other part I want you to write down as you go through this worksheet. I want you to talk about how the yarn feels to you. Does it feel firm or does it feel squishy? Is it something you would want to have in a particular garment versus another garment? And what would that be and why? So that's what we're going to write down for the feel. So the next part of this activity is to get some fiber and to test it out. This is some comb top that I have. I'm using this comb top because it has color in it and it will show some streaks. If you don't have a multicolored comb top to practice with, that's okay. You can combine two separate ones together, or you could maybe color a little piece with marker just to help you be able to find your twist angles. So I'm going to use some of this, and you don't need too much. I'm going to flip one of these over so that the colors are kind of a little more lined up. messed up, I should say, not lined up. So it's just a little easier to see what's going on here. All right, so what we're going to do first is figure out how much twist this actually needs. So if I give it one turn, oh look, it's not yarn yet. It still slides apart. So if I try this again, I give it maybe 2 turns. I'm still coming apart. So now I give it another twist, another twist, another twist, another twist, and look, that twist is starting to go to the thin sections, isn't it? When I put tension on it, the twist will find the thin spots. So I'm going to keep twisting and twisting and twisting until I can pull on this without it coming apart, because that's the point when it stops being fiber and it starts being yarn. All right, I'm getting pretty close now. When I pull on this, it is no longer coming apart, and that just happened in the last turn that I gave it. I can put this on my yarn gauge and you can see I'm even gentler than the 20-degree angle. This is just barely starting to hold together. So when I hold this up to this chart, it's lining up right about at that very first 7-degree line. It does not matter if you are experimenting with it as a thick single or as a thin single, because the twist angle will be the same. It is just a matter of requiring more twist to achieve that angle in a thin single than a thicker single. The next thing I want you to do then is to add some more twist, check your angle, and see what feels like a soft yarn and what still needs more twist to have integrity in it. And then keep going and figure out at what point does it start to feel very brittle. You can use your wheel if it's easier for you to use your wheel for this little exercise, putting too much twist in it. There we go. Yeah, this is starting to feel very brittle. This is the point when things start to snap. So you will know if you have a, oh, look, there's my thin spot. See where it's curling up like a little pigtail? That's the thin spot. So you'll know when you get to your brittle point, because it will snap wherever you have those pigtails. That's where the yarn will snap. Those pigtails are showing that it's weak because it's accumulating too much twist, and too much twist makes it brittle. We have no integrity after that point. So play around with this, play around with your fibers, do it slowly and gently, and use your wheel if that's helpful to you. Make some observations, and I will see you in the Facebook group. Happy spinning!